They say a man's home is his castle, a simplification of a statement given by Judge Sir Edward Coke in a 1604 decree. Coke's intention was to firmly establish the right of the individual to defend their home from intrusion through the use of deadly force if necessary. Today on Scream to Screen, we hold our breath and take a look at the innovative horror thriller Don't Breathe and its similarities to a horrific real-life event that ended in tragedy. Before we plunge into the darkness, make sure you subscribe to The Graveyard Shift and let us know in the comments which true-life horror stories you'd like for us to cover in the future. Those who would defend themselves are legally in the right to do so, and so often it is commended by the populace at large. It feels good to see evil thwarted, and who hasn't dreamed of being Batman? That said, the use of deadly force must not only be proven to be justified, but it also can leave lasting wounds on a community, and its reverberations can extend beyond expectation. Every law has a loophole, and beyond every loophole is someone looking to exploit it. Consider, if you will, the case of Byron David Smith, proud homeowner in the quaint city of Little Falls, Minnesota. With a population under 10,000, it's the kind of city where everyone is your neighbor, crime rates are low, and its major claim to fame was once the Charles A. Lindbergh State Park and historical site on the Mississippi River. That is, before the dire events that took place on Thanksgiving Day, 2012. Teenage cousins Nicholas Brady and Haley Kiefer, perhaps out of sheer boredom, decided to break into the Smith residence, believing no one was home. This choice would shatter the silence on this morning of thanks and leave the two lifeless. You see, Smith was home, waiting. As a former agent of the U.S. State Department, 64-year-old Smith was well aware of his rights and was prepared on that day to take a stand. His home had been broken into on a number of occasions in the preceding months while he was away, so he had taken care to make it seem as if the house was empty. With the lights off and his truck parked well away from the home, Smith laid in wait armed with a .22 caliber revolver in his lap. Presumably to be able to provide evidence of acting in compliance with the state of Minnesota's laws, he began recording himself. The tape continued to roll as the horrific and absurd events unfolded. The tape begins with the hushed and frankly disturbing whispers of Smith preparing himself. His murmurs ceased with the clattering of broken glass as one of the unwitting teens break a window to gain access to the home. Laying in wait, Smith remains in the basement, firing upon Brady as he descends into the basement. Brady was struck twice, one of which hit him in the face, ending his life. Muttering to himself erratically, he falls silent again as the boy's cousin discovers the scene. Smith fires again, ending the life of young Haley after a moment of her pleading to be spared. Believing the two to be dead, he arranged their bodies and began rehearsing his call to the authorities that would follow. In the process, he discovered that Haley was still clinging to life and made the decision to end that with a single shot under the chin. Following the execution, Smith continues to ramble to himself saying, "I feel a little bit safer. Not totally safe." Smith would in fact not make that contact until the following day, as he did not wish to bother the law enforcement on a holiday. By the time the authorities had been informed about the results of the Thanksgiving Day home invasion, Smith had no doubt rehearsed his lines and dialed into his story, so as to be able to deliver compelling evidence to justify his actions. Naturally, the police were stunned to discover that the breaking and entering and the violence that followed was at that point a day old, which proved to be the first piece of evidence that Smith had crossed the line. During the crime scene investigation, the police discovered the tape that Smith had made in effort to validate the lawfulness of his actions. This proved to be a critical piece of evidence later used against Smith when he was to stand trial. Smith was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. He was found guilty on April 29th of 2014, sentenced to life in prison. March 2016 saw the release of Don't Breathe, directed by Fede Alvarez, hot on the heels of his reimagining of Sam Raimi's classic Evil Dead. Pairing again with Raimi to produce, Alvarez co-wrote and directed his sophomore effort with a budget of $9.9 million. After earning $157 million in the box office and gaining favorable critical reviews, it was clear that Alvarez had tapped into something powerful. Don't Breathe was a success for several reasons. First, it was a well-done film, full of the scares that horror fans have come to crave, but there is potentially a more insidious appeal of the film to some. The idea of doing whatever it takes to protect the home is a power fantasy that is very real for a segment of the American population. Don't Breathe may play into that fantasy, especially for those unfamiliar with the Smith case just a few years prior. The film centers on 3 delinquent minors who engage in a number of crimes for profit in hopes of funding their respective dreams. For some, their motives are understandable. They long to escape their abusive and impoverished homes, while others find motivation in greed. One of the kids gets a hot tip that Norman Nordstrom, a blind Gulf War vet, is sitting on over $300,000 cash in his home. This money was collected from a court settlement, resulting from a demise of Nordstrom's daughter in a car accident caused by a wealthy young woman. Grim as it may be, the gang sees an opportunity they can't pass up. They figured stealing from a blind man would be like stealing candy from a baby, but they were dead wrong. The kids develop a plan and soon find themselves following through on it, that pile of money being too good of a deal to pass up. After drugging Norman's dog and filling Nordstrom's room with a sleeping gas, the would-be felons enter the home in search of the cache of money that they heard about. The intruders remove their shoes in an effort to mitigate any sound that they may produce as they search the home. Soon the trio come across a locked basement door and become convinced that this is where the money must be kept. Unable to unlock the door by other means, one of the kids shoots the lock, causing Norman to wake from the gas-induced slumber. Nordstrom finds his way to the basement, overpowers the youth with a gun and ends his life while the others watch in pained silence, unseen by the blind vet. Believing himself to be alone, Nordstrom opens a hidden safe to check on his valuables, all while the surviving pair look on stifling their fear of being noticed. After Nordstrom leaves, the pair reopen the safe, not wanting to have risked their lives and lost their friend, only to have nothing to show for it. Unfortunately for the 2 remaining thieves, Nordstrom discovers their shoes. He returns to the safe and finds it emptied of its contents. What follows is a chilling game of cat and mouse as the blind but otherwise prospective veteran hunts down those who would dare to enter his home in hopes of stealing his wealth. There are perhaps obvious parallels between the Smith case and the film Don't Breathe. Both the tragic real case and the film center on a situation where no one comes out clean. The young thieves in this story, perhaps due to age, are unable to understand the gravity and consequence of their actions. They are undeniably in the wrong. Breaking into homes and stealing are not safe activities and shouldn't be tolerated even when committed by a minor. That said, one would be hard-pressed to find someone who feels the death penalty is an adequate and just course for such a crime. Even those who stand firmly alongside the coke-influenced castle laws of today saw fit to convict Smith, through a jury of his peers, mind you, of homicide. Perhaps his case was an exception, due to his malice and forethought and failure to report the incident immediately. But it stands to reason that this may not be the only time the law has been perverted in such a way. In the film, we saw Nordstrom was clearly villainous in his own right, having taken a hostage and held her against her will as a host for his replacement child, but what if that element of the story was removed? Would we still understand that Nordstrom is the villain of the story, or would our attention shift to the kids and their wrongdoing? With this adjustment, would we discover that Nordstrom was simply acting in defense of his property, as is his right to do? If art is anything like life, it's doubtful. Nordstrom would still be seen as a cold killer, just as the courts have determined Smith to be. Smith's state of Minnesota doesn't have a stand-your-ground law, despite whatever Smith believed his rights to be at the time. Minnesota is a duty of retreat state, which means that you must back away from confrontation if possible. That being said, the law would have provided Smith protection if he could have provided evidence of self-defense, something that both he and Nordstrom surpassed when they committed these acts of violence, real and fictional. The Smith tapes are chilling. They exist on the public record and document the tragedy in a way that is disturbing and a cold representation of needless vengeance. Thankfully, we don't need such a thing. We have Don't Breathe, a fantastic film that allows us to explore such a dark topic in a way that results in no one getting hurt, while still reminding us: never break into someone's house. You won't know what they're capable of until it's too late. Had you heard about the Smith case before? How do you feel about the castle doctrine? Let us know in the comments down below. Please be sure to like and subscribe to The Graveyard Shift, and as always, check back next time to find out what else will make it from scream to screen.